The original Ikari Warrior arrives on Master System in Segaiden episode 36.
It's your favorite jacket, huh?
December 86 brings us our second Light Phaser game, and also, I guess our third? I'm not really sure how to parse this one. I think the way to go is to treat it as a single game with an unwieldy title. Although Sega packaged and presented this one as a combo cart, I can't imagine the two shooting games here shipping as standalone releases, even as Sega carts. They both feel unbelievably slight on their own. And perhaps more to the point, when you combine the two, you end up with the same kind of variety and volume that Nintendo had established as the norm for its individual light gun games. All of Nintendo's Zapper target shooting games included a smaller B title to flesh out its respective package. Duck Hunt contained a digitized version of the company's laser clay shooting system installations from the 1970s. Wild Gunman had a secondary saloon shootout, and Hogan's Alley added on a bonus trick shooting mode that involved keeping tin cans airborne for as long as possible. Marksman Shooting Trap Shooting adopts this setup as well. In fact, it's hard to look at this combo cart and not read it as a direct take on some of Nintendo's NES games, which had been around for a couple of years on Famicom by the time Master System shipped. This makes this cart one of the rare instances in which Sega overtly borrowed from NES and Famicom, something that honestly didn't happen all that much on Master System. Sure, you have your Alex Kidd and Miracle Worlds and Golden Axe Warriors, which clearly existed as direct responses to 8-bit Nintendo hits, but for the most part, Sega really preferred to just do its own thing. When the company did create derivative content, they almost always lifted inspiration from fellow arcade powerhouses like Namco, Taito, or Irem. So a game, or games, like this, where you can draw a direct line to an NES release and say, that's it, well, you just didn't see that a lot on Master System. In this case, each component of Sega's shooting collection connects directly to a single mode of an NES shooting title. Marksman Shooting, the lead title, plays like a less whimsical version of Hogan's Alley. Players take aim down an indoor shooting gallery, with concrete walls lined by pipes and broken up by structures that house rails for a moving target system. The scenery never appears to change, so far as I can tell, nor does the nature of the target you gun down. You always stand in this blue concrete space firing at silhouettes. You won't find the cartoon effigies of Hogan's Alley here, nor do you need to worry about friendly fire. No civilians pop up to force you to discriminate between friend and foe. You simply aim for the paper silhouettes as they appear, doing your best to target their bodies, and ideally, the red bullseye in each target's chest. The more precise your shot, the more points you earn. Play continues until you fail to qualify for the next round, with targets appearing in more complex patterns and offering less time for you to aim and fire with each new round of gunplay. As a test of skill, it's fine, and the graphics look nice, albeit simple. But it lacks the variety and personality of Hogan's Alley, which diminishes its staying power despite its more detailed scenery versus its NES counterpart. As for trap shooting, well, it's almost 100% a duplicate of the laser clay homage from Duck Hunt. Gray clay targets launch 2 at a time, and you have 3 shots with which to take both down. The targets can launch from several different points along the bottom of the screen, and each follows its own trajectory as it recedes into the distance. Sometimes they'll fly far removed from one another, while other times they'll sail clustered in a close group. No surprises here. The clay skeets present a large target when they first launch, but their visual proximity to the player causes them to move quickly. They grow smaller in size as they travel away from your perspective, but they also track more slowly across the screen. So you can hit a big target if you take aim quickly enough right away, or you can take a few seconds to line up a precise shot to blast a smaller target if you wait. Either way, you only have 3 bullets for 2 targets, so you can't afford to be sloppy about it. It's straightforward, but effective. One thing I do appreciate about Marksman Shooting Trap Shooting is that the game displays a small impact sprite to indicate where you've hit. This can help you correct your aim if you keep shooting wide. It's also useful for helping you mentally recalibrate if, for example, your light phaser has become misaligned about 24 pixels to the left of the gun's center sights. It is nice that Sega started to correct for its unreliable hardware through software. Anyway, Marksman Shooting Trap Shooting doesn't exactly burst with originality, but I don't think that was the point. Yes, we've seen these shooting games on NES, but almost no one owned both an NES and Master System back in the day. So, for kids who affiliated themselves with the Sega side of our nascent console wars, Marksman Shooting Trap Shooting simply chiseled away at the number of unique experiences the NES library could offer over that of the Master System. Given the popularity of light gun games in the US, it seems a pretty sensible tactic. Next up, we have our first Master System game, officially licensed from an external media property. Unless, of course, you live in Europe, in which case you just get bad box art. It's Rambo, or Secret Command, or Ashura if you live in Japan. Well, leave it to Sega to properly bring all of those things together with Rambo First Blood Part 2 for Master System, a game based on the Sylvester Stallone movie that Ikari Warriors totally ripped off. Talk about reclaiming stolen valor. You can play Rambo solo, but doing so results in an almost impossibly difficult endeavor. Simply surviving to the end of the first stage demands skill, determination, and a great deal of memorization. Rambo moves slowly, far more slowly than his Ikari counterparts. And the hit detection out here in the jungles of Vietnam offers no forgiveness. Enemies attack aggressively and fire relentlessly, and a single successful shot will deplete poor John Rambo of one of his 3 precious lives. No, this game really wants you to team up with a second player, who controls a duplicate version of Rambo with a darker skin tone and yellow costume accents. I've seen a few online articles that jokingly, I think, refer to this character as Carl Weathers, a reference to an entirely different Stallone film franchise, Rocky, in which Weathers played rival character Apollo Creed. I don't think the developers really put much thought into the second player character outside of the fact that they wanted to recreate the cooperative combat of Ikari Warriors. It's not as though fidelity to the Rambo license was some all-important, immutable detail that Sega attempted to capture here, given that this particular piece of software only shipped under the name Rambo in North America. Actually, I'm not sure that fidelity factored in here at all. On Mark III, Rambo showed up as Ashura, which, given the martial nature of the game, I think was meant to refer to the ferocious Hindu anti-gods of war, as a sort of oblique reference to the fact that, again, the title of Ikari Warriors means Angry Warriors. Except, those Hindu beings are actually called Asura, whereas Ashura is the name of a holy day in the Islamic faith. Whoops. In Europe, Rambo shipped as Secret Command, a title that saw Sega absolutely playing with fire. It simultaneously flirted with a coin-op source of inspiration for this game, Capcom's Shinjo no Okami, which appeared in the West as Commando, as well as a cinematic inspiration, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando. Maybe they figured that by dropping the terminal O in the title and appending the word secret to the beginning, no one would notice. Well, in any case, all of this naming weirdness just embodies the messy nature of Rambo for Master System. In the broad strokes, Rambo plays exactly as you'd expect. The action transpires through a 3/4 top-down perspective, and you can traverse the battlefield in 8 directions as you scroll steadily upward. Enemies swarm you from all sides, but primarily from straight ahead, attacking with various means. The scenery, rocks, trees, rivers, swamps, etc., obstructs your progress, either by preventing passage or by causing you to move more slowly. And as with Ikari Warriors, Commando, Ninja Princess, Super Tank, Frontline, and so forth, you have 2 attack options at your command. Your standard machine gun fires infinite ammo in a direct line that travels most of the way across the screen, while you have a limited stock of more powerful alternate weapons, in this case Rambo's trademark exploding grenade arrows, that you can deploy tactically for various effects. The grenade arrows explode with a small area of effect that can take out any nearby foes, making it useful against clusters of enemies. You also need to use an arrow to destroy the barrier gates that appear in place of proper stage bosses. Once you reach the end of a level, the scrolling freezes and enemies appear from structures all around the screen in endless waves. After a while, the gate at the top of the screen will begin flashing, at which point you can arrow grenade it to blow it open and advance to the next stage. Your arrows also perform a critical role in improving your arrows. As you advance along the battlefield, you'll encounter special, highlighted structures that you can destroy with a well-aimed explosive, freeing the prisoner of war inside, which was, Rambo's entire goal in the movie, as any fan of the NES game or the movie will recall. In gratitude, said POW tosses you a power-up icon, which might replenish your stock of arrows, improve your arrow's attack power, or expand your arrow's area of effect. These bonuses reset when you die though, which makes them short-lived, because Rambo dies a lot. Rambo moves about as slowly as you'd expect from Stallone, a guy who leveled up his strength at the expense of stats like speed, wisdom, and charisma. Even with a second player, the enemy constantly outguns you. Basic foot soldiers can fire their rifles at you in a full 360 degrees, whereas Rambo can only shoot in 5 directions, forward, left, right, and at forward diagonals. And you face plenty of more advanced enemies, such as the flame-throwing soldiers who can fire enormous bursts of flames in a constant stream at weird angles that sluggish Rambo has a hard time maneuvering around. Red elite soldiers move quickly and fire more aggressively than their lower-ranking underlings. and sometimes you have to sneak around tanks, which you simply can't destroy at all. And that's just in the first stage. Rambo consists of about half a dozen stages in total, each more difficult than the last, and you only have 3 lives with which to complete the entire thing. Well, that's not totally true. You receive a bonus life as a reward for completing each stage, and technically the game does have a continue feature. As with Ikari Warriors for NES, you can't simply select a continue item on the title screen when you die. Instead, you need to input a special code to resume play on the current stage. But unlike Ikari's one-size-fits-all ABBA code, Rambo requires you to input a completely different secret code for each level. Mess up or get confused and it's back to the very beginning. It's a shame Rambo doesn't play a little more fluidly or offer just a little more grace to players. Simply giving the player a zippier walking speed, offering more generous collision detection, and making the continue feature a straightforward affair would go a long way toward mitigating the lopsided balance of the game, which is filled with surprise attacks and ridiculous cheap shots like massively explosive grenades that randomly target Rambo from out of nowhere and force you to haul ass away from their impact point in order to avoid their splash damage. As a Commando or Ikari Warriors clone, it plays pretty well, even if it lacks advanced play features like Commando's hidden tunnels and the ability to cruise around in a tank or helicopter seen in Ikari Warriors. But it looks good, and it has a great if morose soundtrack, and everyone loves co-op play. It also appears to take a turn for the bizarre in the later levels, which shift their focus from the jungles and swamps in favor of cities. Rambo didn't actually spend any time in proper Vietnamese cities in the film, and the prevalence of policemen as enemies in these later levels almost seemed to be a reference to the original First Blood's Pacific Northwest Manhunt, effectively turning this game into a time-traveling journey into John Rambo's past, or even Stallone's past if player 2 is truly Carl Weathers. Once again, I suspect we have a Master System title that compensates for its brevity with almost insurmountable difficulty. Not an uncommon sight in the 8-bit days in general, but a feature that appears with unusual frequency on this system. There's nothing wrong with a shortish game if it's good. I mean, just look at how interminably long those stages in the NES version of Ikari Warriors were, for an example of padded length gone horribly awry. But Rambo is a short game designed to prevent players from breezing through to the end by tilting the odds so steeply against them that it can really undermine any desire to keep playing. At least in hindsight, anyway. As always, I'm sure kids who spent their entire allowance on Rambo back in the day and ended up being stuck with it as their only new game for a few months before they could afford something else learned to cope and Stockholm Syndrome themselves into loving it. And God bless your poor soul if that describes you. Next time on Segaiden, no princess, just ninja.